Well, in some sense, every moment of my life is on borrowed time, and that's not something that I take lightly or forget.
In my eyes, Braxton is a giant. A wounded veteran, a patriot, a husband, a father. I've watched him take a colt that has never been ridden in 3 years, and in 3 hours gain its trust enough so that he can ride it. What's probably more impressive is that to him that process was an analogy of his life. A cathartic experience that places his mind in a place where it exercises executing patience, healing, and calm to those that he interacts with. He gets the same outcomes when he's in the outdoors and hunting. Braxton has gone through hell and back defending our freedoms. A man that has had suicidal thoughts and overcome dozens of surgeries. I cannot begin to fathom what he has been through. But I know one thing. I am a richer person for knowing him. And all I can say is thank you.
I could have very easily died on January 5th in 2006, and in some ways I would have died a proud young man serving his country and would have sacrificed for what I saw as the protection and safety of my friends, my brothers in arms. But I didn't, and here I am, and life can be difficult. It's painful and sometimes frustrating, but if I always remember that I could have died that day, I can't help but feel anything but blessed that I'm here, experience anything. I have 3 children now. I get to play with my son every morning. And that's not something I take for granted. I was stationed in Ramadi, Iraq in 2005 and 2006, and we were on a security operation, a dismounted security mission. We had a small skirmish, and then a suicide bomber detonated himself, and I was hit with over 50 ball bearings and a couple of AK rounds. No one's clear exactly whether they were inside the suicide bomb or shot. And both my legs were broken in multiple places. Both my arms were broken in multiple places. My spine was fractured. I had a bunch of fractured ribs. I had some bleeding on the brain. The first time I was able to run again is when my life changed forever. And it wasn't very long after that I was able to get into good enough shape to be able to get out on the mountain hunting again. And I still remember the first hunt I had after being injured. I had my trad bow in my hands and I was chasing elk, and I got up on this very steep ridge in the thick pine trees, and the wind was blowing really, really hard, and I just knew an ethical shot was unlikely to present itself in a wind like that. And I was sitting there frustrated, and then I remembered this poem. It's like an old Western poem. There's a few lines in there where this man writes about he's asking God to give him a wind in his face, a wind that cuts like a knife and cuts right down to the bone, into the heart of what is. And what he was asking for is a wind that would remind him that he was just a speck in the universe, and that what was happening to him in that moment was inconsequential for the rest of humanity. Sitting there on that ridge, on a bow hunt, thinking this was the most important thing in the world at that moment. You know, here I was, this guy who was told he was never going to walk again, and I had conquered that, and I'd just climbed this giant ridge, and I'd gotten into a position where I should be able to kill an elk. And when I remembered that poem, it helped to really set my mind back right. Like, just because I put all this effort into this stuff, and just because I had been able to, you know, conquer the injuries in some sense, just because of all of that, it didn't mean that the mountain cared. The mountain doesn't care what you did, and that's why I think it's a beautiful and just place, because it's just in its indifference. When I'm out in places like this, in the wilderness, and experiencing the world as it is supposed to be, as God made it, it helps to remind me not just that there is something higher and more important and greater than us, but that we spend so much time in our modern life in pursuit of sort of self-betterment that we forget that it's fruitless in some ways, and that humbling experience is important. It helps put all the rest of your life into perspective. Knowing that failure is an aspect of life that you cannot avoid is an important thing, and being out here is a persistent reminder of that, because no matter how hard you work, or how much effort you're willing to put into something, things can always go wrong. My name is Braxton McCoy. I'm a proud American, and I consider myself very blessed. Everyone has their own story. This is mine. It's in the blood.